This story is about a normal girl who never planned to break the law. It's about how something that looked like an ordinary online side hustle slowly turned into a legal nightmare. And by the end of this story, you'll see how one simple mistake, trusting the wrong process, led to police showing up at the door of someone who believed she had done nothing wrong. At the beginning, Emma had no reason to be afraid. At the end, everything connected to her name would become evidence. Emma was not reckless. She wasn't chasing fast money, internet fame, or shortcuts. She was the kind of person who read terms and conditions, who double-checked addresses, who believed that if you stayed within the rules, nothing bad would happen. That belief shaped every decision she made, including the one that would eventually change everything. When Emma started helping with online resales, it felt practical, even responsible. Second-hand platforms were booming. Sustainability was trending. Everyone seemed to be flipping clothes, electronics, and accessories online. It wasn't underground. It wasn't secret. It was mainstream. And that made it feel safe. The opportunity came quietly. A casual message. Someone she loosely knew, someone already in the business, asking if she could help manage listings. Not stealing, not sourcing, just organizing. Uploading photos, writing descriptions, answering buyer questions. Emma was good at that kind of work. She understood how trust worked online. Clean profiles, polite language, fast responses. It felt like a skill, not a risk. She asked basic questions at first. Where do the items come from? Are they used? Are there returns? The answers were simple and convincing. Overstocks, unwanted gifts, bulk second-hand buys, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Emma accepted them because there was no obvious reason not to. Everything aligned with what she already believed about online resale culture. The first items sold quickly. Jackets, shoes, bags, headphones. Popular brands, slightly used, priced just low enough to move fast but not suspiciously cheap. Buyers left good reviews. Platforms approved the listings without issues. Payments cleared. Emma's confidence grew. Soon more items followed, then more accounts. Some registered under her guidance, some using her name for credibility. She hesitated at first, but it was explained logically. Verified sellers sold better. Platforms trusted real identities, and everything was transparent anyway. Emma agreed, because transparency felt like protection. She didn't hide anything. That was the irony. Her email, her phone number, her ID verification, her bank details, all correctly entered, all legitimate, all traceable. Emma believed that only people doing something wrong needed to hide. She wasn't hiding, so she assumed she was safe. There were moments, small ones, when something felt slightly off. Items arriving faster than expected, multiple. Identical products appearing in short time frames. Instructions to post quickly, to avoid delays, to keep things moving. Nothing illegal, just urgency. Emma told herself this was how online business worked. Speed mattered. Algorithms rewarded activity. Sellers who hesitated lost visibility. And she wasn't lying to anyone. Descriptions were accurate. Conditions were honest. Buyers got what they paid for. That's what mattered. Right? What Emma didn't see was the pattern forming beneath the surface. A pattern invisible to her but very visible to systems designed to track behavior. Sales histories, account links, transaction chains. Repeated brand appearances, locations, timelines. All of it was quietly building a profile. And while Emma focused on messages, photos, and ratings, someone else was looking at the same data from a very different angle. Not as business, not as sustainability, but as evidence. She still believed this was temporary, just a phase, a side hustle. She could drop any time. Something that would quietly disappear from her life once she no longer needed it. She didn't know that by then it was already too late to step away. Because when everything is tied to your name, Walking away doesn't erase the trail. It only leaves you standing at the end of it. Before Emma noticed anything was wrong, she noticed something else. How effortless everything felt. Sales came in faster than she expected. Items barely stayed online before being bought. Messages from buyers were short and decisive. No bargaining, no hesitation. "Is this available?" followed immediately by payment. At first, Emma took it as a sign of good work. Clean listings, fair prices, high demand. That's how successful reselling looked, right? But the ease became repetitive, predictable, almost mechanical. Every batch followed the same pattern. Items uploaded in the evening, notifications lighting up her phone by morning, payments clearing without issues, reviews appearing quickly, often brief but positive. Great seller, fast shipping. As described, platforms rewarded the activity. Visibility increased. Accounts grew stronger, too strong. Emma began to notice that she never had to push sales. She never had to promote. She never had to lower prices. Buyers found the items almost instantly, as if they were searching for them specifically. That wasn't how casual secondhand usually worked. It was competitive, messy, slow. But this wasn't slow at all. She brushed the thought aside. Then came the quantities. 5 identical jackets, 3 of the same headphones, multiple pairs of the same sneakers, same size, same condition. She had seen bulk resellers before, but this felt different. There was no variation, no randomness. Everything looked selected. She asked once, casually, "Do you get these from the same source?" The answer came fast. "Yeah, it's normal, don't worry about it." That should have been enough, and for a while it was. But then there were the instructions. "Post this one immediately. Don't delay this batch. Use your verified account for these items. If buyers ask questions, keep answers short." None of it sounded illegal. It just sounded rushed, as if timing mattered more than accuracy. As if speed was essential for reasons Emma didn't fully understand. She started feeling a strange pressure, not explicit but present. A sense that slowing down would cause problems. That asking too many questions would complicate things. That efficiency was expected, not optional. Emma noticed herself adapting. She stopped questioning quantities. She stopped wondering why items arrived without boxes. She stopped caring that serial numbers were never mentioned. Not because she believed something bad was happening, but because nothing bad had happened yet. That's how normalization works. One evening, while reviewing sales history, Emma realized something unsettling. Every single account involved traced back to her. Not just management access, ownership, her name, her documents, her verification. Even accounts she barely remembered creating were now deeply active. At the time, it felt like control, power, responsibility. In reality, it was exposure. She searched online for stories similar to hers. Resellers getting into trouble, accounts being flagged, platforms suspending sellers. Most cases involved obvious fraud, counterfeit goods, fake identities. None of that applied to her. Her items were real, buyers were satisfied, payments were clean. She closed the browser and told herself she was overthinking. Still, something shifted. She began double-checking her messages, rereading instructions, watching how carefully she followed directions. She realized that she no longer felt like a helper. She felt like a node in a system she didn't design. And systems don't care about intentions. Late one night, she received a message marked urgent. A new batch was coming. High-demand items. She was told to prepare listings in advance. Titles, descriptions, pricing, everything ready to go. The message ended with a line that stayed with her longer than it should have. "Timing matters, please don't delay." Emma stared at her screen. Why would timing matter that much? She thought about asking. She even typed a question, then deleted it. Instead, she did what she had been doing all along. She complied. What she didn't know was that elsewhere, timing mattered for a very different reason. Because patterns don't just form, they trigger attention. And attention, once triggered, doesn't disappear. Emma would soon learn that being efficient, visible, and verified doesn't protect you when you're standing at the center of a network you don't fully understand. And the system she was helping run was about to collapse inward, right onto her name. Emma had always believed that danger announced itself clearly. Alarms, warnings, red flags you couldn't miss. But nothing like that happened. There was no sudden message saying stop, no account suspension, no angry buyer. Everything kept working, and that was the problem. Because systems don't break loudly, they observe silently. Emma didn't know when the attention began. Only that one day something felt different. The platform she used every day, once friendly and predictable, started behaving in subtle, unsettling ways. Listings took longer to approve, payments cleared with slight delays. Automated messages appeared more often, requesting confirmations, additional verifications, routine checks. Normal, she told herself. Platforms updated policies all the time. Still, she noticed how often her information was being requested. Identity verification reminders, requests to confirm business activity, notices about unusual sales velocity. The language was neutral, almost polite, but it carried weight. It wasn't accusatory, yet. Emma complied with everything she always did. What she didn't realize was that her compliance was feeding the very system analyzing her. Every click, every upload, every confirmed transaction added another data point. Algorithms weren't judging her intentions, they were mapping behavior, frequency, volume, patterns, and patterns were everywhere. The same brands appearing again and again, the same price ranges, the same time windows for uploads, the same verified identity controlling multiple high-activity accounts. To Emma, it was organization. To the system, it was consolidation. One night, she tried to untangle her digital footprint. She opened account settings, transaction histories, platform dashboards. What she saw unsettled her. Everything led back to her, not to the suppliers, not to the sources, not to the people who physically handled the goods, to her. She realized she couldn't clearly explain her role if asked. Was she an assistant, a manager, a seller, a business partner? The boundaries were blurred, not intentionally but effectively. And in legal systems, blurred boundaries don't protect anyone. Emma searched deeper. She looked up cases involving online resale investigations. She noticed a recurring theme. Authorities rarely chase unknown suppliers first. They start with names, verified identities, bank accounts, people who can be found, people like her. She remembered the phrase she'd been told early on. Use your name for trust. Trust, she now understood, worked both ways. She considered stepping back, deleting accounts, distancing herself. But that idea collapsed the moment she realized how deeply integrated she already was. Closing accounts wouldn't erase records. Transactions were archived. Data was permanent. Even inactivity would stand out, and inactivity can look suspicious. Emma felt trapped by correctness, by having done everything the right way. She hadn't hidden. She hadn't lied. She hadn't obscured her identity. And yet that transparency had turned into a cage. Then came the first real crack. A buyer messaged her late at night. The tone wasn't aggressive, just confused. Police contacted me, asked where this item came from. Emma froze. She reread the message, again and again. Her hands went cold. She replied carefully, neutrally, professionally, asked for clarification. The buyer didn't respond. Hours later, the listing disappeared. No explanation, no warning, just gone. The next morning, she logged in to find a notification requesting additional documentation for compliance review. It wasn't an accusation. It was a procedure. But procedures exist for reasons. Emma began to understand something fundamental and terrifying. Once systems start asking questions, answers don't stop the process. They only shape how it continues. She checked her phone repeatedly that day. Every vibration felt heavier than the last. Emails blurred together. Routine sounds suddenly felt intrusive. She tried to focus on normal life, but her attention kept snapping back to screens, accounts, histories. Somewhere, connections were being drawn, and she wasn't the one drawing them. That evening, Emma received a message she hadn't expected. Not from a buyer, not from a platform, but from the person who had brought her into this. Everything's fine, just keep doing what you're doing. The reassurance felt wrong. Too calm, too late. Because Emma now understood the truth no one had told her at the beginning. When something goes wrong in a system like this, the person with the cleanest, most visible name is the easiest to reach. And she was about to learn how fast visibility turns into accountability. The knock didn't sound aggressive. That was the worst part. It was firm, controlled, patient. The kind of knock that doesn't belong to neighbors or delivery drivers. Emma heard it while standing in her kitchen, phone in hand, scrolling through unanswered messages and compliance notifications. For a second, she considered not opening the door, pretending she wasn't home, letting the moment pass. But something inside her already knew. Moments like this don't pass. She opened the door. Two people stood outside, calm, professional, neutral expressions. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't rush. One of them spoke her name, clearly, correctly, without hesitation. Emma Collins? That was when the story stopped being online. They explained why they were there in measured terms. An investigation, stolen goods, online platforms, accounts linked to her identity. They weren't accusing her yet. They were informing her, gathering facts, asking questions. Emma listened, nodding, barely breathing. She tried to explain. She told them she never stole anything, never touched the goods, never knew they were stolen. She said she only managed listings, only helped with sales, only followed instructions. They listened carefully. Then they asked her to sit down. Inside her apartment, everything suddenly felt exposed. Her laptop, her phone, her router blinking quietly in the corner. Screens that once represented productivity now looked like witnesses. They asked for devices. Emma handed them over without resistance. She had nothing to hide, or so she believed. Passwords, logins, verification codes. She cooperated fully because cooperation felt like the last proof of innocence she had. As they went through her accounts, the reality became impossible to ignore. Her name was everywhere. Every seller profile, every payment route, every verified account, every tax document, every transaction history. The officers didn't need to say much. The evidence spoke on its own. Not guilt, involvement, presence, control. They explained something Emma had never considered before. In legal terms, managing, facilitating, and profiting from the sale of stolen goods does not require knowledge of the theft. Intent matters. But responsibility exists even without it. I didn't know, Emma said again quietly. One of the officers nodded. We hear that often. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. She realized then how the system worked. The people who stole the items were invisible, unregistered, unverified, unreachable. But Emma, she was documented, traceable, cooperative, real. The investigation wasn't about morality. It was about accountability. They showed her screenshots, buyer statements, platform reports, flags triggered by volume and repetition, a digital map connecting everything back to her. It was clean, logical, unemotional, irrefutable. When they finally left, her apartment felt different, smaller, colder, as if the walls had absorbed what had just happened. Emma sat alone, surrounded by silence and the absence of her devices. She thought about every moment she had told herself, this is normal. Every time she chose speed over questions. Every time she trusted structure instead of understanding. And she understood something devastatingly simple. Being careful is not the same as being safe. Being legal-looking is not the same as being legal. Emma wasn't arrested that day, but her life had already entered a process she couldn't stop. Because once the door opens like that, it never truly closes again. The days after the knock blurred together. Emma measured time not in hours, but in notifications she no longer received. Her phone was gone. Her laptop was gone. Silence replaced the constant background noise of messages, payments, and platform alerts that had once structured her routine. Silence can be louder than chaos. She replayed every interaction in her head, every decision, every moment she had chosen not to ask questions because everything looked normal. Now nothing felt normal anymore. Every memory carried weight. Every small choice felt larger than it had ever been at the time. The first formal interview happened quickly. A small room, neutral walls, no windows, two people across the table, polite but focused. They explained the process again slowly, as if clarity could soften the impact. Investigation, evidence review, possible charges, possible outcomes, nothing was final. Yet. They asked her to tell her story from the beginning. Emma spoke carefully. She explained how it started, how she helped with listings, how she never handled goods, how she believed everything was secondhand and legal. She chose her words with precision, hoping accuracy would protect her. They listened. Then they asked questions that felt different. Why were all accounts registered to you? Why did payments route through your control? Why did you continue after noticing unusual volume? Why didn't you verify sources? Emma didn't have strong answers, only honest ones. I trusted the process. I didn't think it was my responsibility. I thought platforms would stop it if something was wrong. One of them leaned forward slightly. Platforms don't stop activity, they report it. That sentence shifted something inside her. They explained the concept she had never fully understood before, facilitation, that by managing, optimizing, and scaling sales, she had enabled the movement of stolen property, regardless of intent. Her actions created efficiency. Efficiency created volume. Volume created damage. She wasn't accused of stealing, she was accused of making theft profitable. Emma felt her chest tighten. She had always associated guilt with intent, with desire, with conscious wrongdoing. But here, guilt was structural. It existed inside systems, not minds. Her lawyer explained it later in clearer terms. You don't need to know a crime is happening to be responsible for it, especially when you benefit from it. Benefit? The word echoed uncomfortably. Yes, she had earned money. Not much, but enough. Enough to connect her to outcomes she never wanted. Emma asked the question she had been afraid to ask. What happens now? The answer wasn't dramatic. It was procedural. Reviews, assessments, potential charges, negotiations, time. A lot of time. She realized that her life was no longer divided into work and rest, plans and weekends. It was divided into before and after. Before the knock, after the knock. She walked home afterward feeling exposed in a way she couldn't explain. Not because people were watching them, but because she now understood how little protection ignorance provided. She thought about the people who had brought her into this. Their names weren't mentioned. Their accounts weren't traced. Their identities weren't verified. They were invisible. Emma wasn't. That night she couldn't sleep, not because she feared prison, not yet, but because she understood the trap she had walked into so willingly. She had believed that being organized, cooperative, and transparent would keep her safe. Instead, it had made her the clearest target. And the worst realization came quietly, without drama. Even if she proved she didn't know, she might still be held responsible. Even if she told the truth, it might not be enough. Even if she was innocent in intention, she was involved in outcome. Emma finally understood that the system wasn't asking whether she was a bad person. It was asking whether she was the easiest person to hold accountable. And the answer to that question was already painfully clear. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They unfolded slowly, quietly, in ways that were harder to explain to others than a dramatic arrest ever would have been. There was no headline, no viral moment. Just a steady dismantling of the life Emma thought she understood. Her accounts were suspended permanently, not just the ones connected to the investigation, all of them. Appeals went unanswered. Explanations were acknowledged but not accepted. Platforms didn't argue. They didn't accuse. They simply closed doors. To systems, context is irrelevant. Friends began to notice something was wrong. Emma stopped replying quickly. She avoided questions about work. She declined invitations. Conversations felt dangerous now, not because she was hiding guilt, but because she couldn't control interpretation. Every explanation sounded defensive. Every silence sounded suspicious. Trust, once questioned, doesn't return easily. The legal process moved forward in its own rhythm. Meetings, documents, waiting. Long stretches of nothing followed by sudden urgency. Emma learned that justice doesn't feel dramatic from the inside. It feels administrative, impersonal, exhausting. Her lawyer prepared her for outcomes she had never imagined facing. Fines, records, restrictions, not life-ending consequences, but life-altering ones. The kind that follow quietly, showing up in background checks, applications, and forms years later. Emma thought often about the irony of it all. She had done everything correctly, used real names, verified identities, paid taxes, followed instructions, and yet that correctness had made her vulnerable. She wasn't punished for being reckless. She was punished for being visible. Over time, the anger faded, not replaced by peace, but by understanding. Emma stopped asking why this happened to her and started asking how easily it could happen to anyone. The answer was uncomfortable. All it takes is trust in a system you don't fully understand. All it takes is believing that legality is enforced automatically. All it takes is assuming that if something were wrong, someone else would stop it. No one did. Emma began speaking differently about her past, not publicly, not dramatically, but honestly when asked. She didn't call herself a victim. She didn't claim innocence as a shield. She simply explained the truth. I didn't steal, but I helped make it work. That sentence carried more responsibility than denial ever could. What stayed with her most was not fear of punishment, but the loss of certainty. The realization that good intentions don't protect you in systems built on outcomes. That being careful is not enough when your name becomes infrastructure. Emma rebuilt slowly. New work, new boundaries, new rules for herself. She learned to ask uncomfortable questions early, to walk away from anything she couldn't explain clearly to someone else, to remember that convenience is often the price of someone else's risk. She never went back to reselling, not because it was illegal, but because she understood how thin the line truly was. The story didn't end with a dramatic verdict. It ended with a quieter truth. In the modern world, responsibility doesn't always belong to the one who commits the act. It belongs to the one whose name connects everything together. And once your name becomes the center of a system, walking away doesn't erase what you helped build.